Mara Linton was 33 years old when the mornings began to feel like a slow punishment instead of a quiet promise. She lived with her husband, Elias, in a narrow house at the edge of a modest town where the streets curved gently as if they had grown that way over time. The house had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that smelled of old wood and soap, and windows that caught the afternoon light just right. Their life there had never been loud or impressive. It had been steady. It had been enough. Mara used to wake before the alarm, listening to the soft sounds of the house settling, the distant hum of a delivery truck passing on the main road, the sparrows arguing in the eaves. She would lie still for a moment, smiling at nothing in particular, then rise with the calm certainty that the day would meet her halfway. She worked at the town library, a place she loved for its dust and order and the way time seemed to slow between the shelves. Elias repaired bicycles in a small shop he rented behind a bakery. In the evenings, they cooked simple meals, ate at the small table by the window, and talked about ordinary things. They did not feel poor or rich. They felt held. Then, without a clear beginning, the heaviness arrived. At first, it was easy to explain away. Mara told herself she had stayed up too late reading or that the weather was changing. She blamed the long winter, the short days, the gray light that pressed against the windows. But the tiredness did not lift when spring came. It settled deeper, like a fog that refused to burn off. Mornings became the hardest. The sound of the alarm felt sharp, almost cruel, and her body did not respond the way it once had. Her limbs felt thick and uncooperative, as if gravity had quietly doubled during the night. Sitting up required effort. Standing required will. Some days she lay there, staring at the ceiling, counting her breaths until the numbers blurred. Elias noticed before she said anything. He noticed the way she moved more slowly, the way she leaned against the counter while brushing her teeth, the way her smile seemed borrowed. He began waking with her, even on days when his shop opened later. He brought her tea in bed, the steam curling gently toward her face. He did not rush her. He asked simple questions and listened carefully to the answers. "I am just tired," she said again and again, wanting the words to be true. At the library, the work she once loved grew heavy too. The quiet no longer felt soothing. It pressed in on her, magnifying the sound of her own breathing. She found herself rereading the same page of the same book, unable to follow the words. Patrons asked her questions, and she answered politely, but each interaction left her drained. By the end of the day, her body felt as though it had been carrying something invisible and immense. She began turning down invitations, dinners with friends, walks in the park, even short visits with her sister felt like obligations she could not afford. When she did go out, she counted the minutes until she could return home. The small house that once felt merely comfortable became a refuge she clung to. Elias tried to keep life steady. He cooked more often, cleaned without being asked, and spoke gently when she snapped or fell silent. At night, he held her while she stared into the dark, her mind buzzing with thoughts that refused to settle. Sometimes she cried without knowing why. Sometimes she felt nothing at all, which frightened her more. Months passed this way, marked not by events but by endurance. Summer arrived, bright and loud, and Mara felt strangely disconnected from it. The sunlight that poured through the windows seemed too strong, almost accusing. People spoke of plans and trips and long evenings, and she nodded, feeling as though she were watching life through glass. There were days when she felt almost normal, when the fog thinned and she laughed easily. Those days were dangerous in their own way. They made her doubt herself. They made her wonder if she had imagined the heaviness, if she were simply weak or ungrateful. When the weight returned, as it always did, it felt like a personal failure. Elias never said such things. When she apologized for being tired, for being distant, for not being who she used to be, he shook his head. He told her she was still herself. He told her she was not a burden. His certainty was a quiet anchor, though she sometimes feared it would not be enough. One autumn evening, rain tapping steadily against the windows, Mara found herself unable to rise from the couch. She had come home early from work, her body trembling with exhaustion that felt bone deep. The room seemed slightly tilted, as if the house itself were tired. Elias knelt beside her, his hands warm and steady on her arms. "We can take our time," he said, his voice low. She nodded, tears slipping sideways into her hair. In that moment, the life they had built together felt both fragile and fiercely real. She thought of all the small things that made it up. The chipped mug she favored, the creak in the third stair, the way Elias hummed when he concentrated. She did not want to lose any of it. As the year turned, the town changed too. Leaves fell, then snow, then the slow thaw. Mara continued moving through her days, sometimes by habit alone. She learned the shape of her limits, though they shifted without warning. She learned how silence could be both restful and cruel. She learned that time did not always heal in straight lines. There were moments of strange clarity. Standing at the library window one afternoon, watching a child press his face against the glass, she felt a sudden surge of tenderness, so sharp it almost hurt. She realized then that even in her exhaustion, she was still capable of feeling deeply. The realization did not fix anything, but it mattered. At home, Elias spoke of small future plans without urgency. A new coat of paint for the kitchen, a trip to the coast someday. He did not demand enthusiasm. He simply kept the idea of forward motion alive. Like a candle protected from the wind, Mara's sense of self shifted quietly. She stopped measuring her days by what she accomplished and began noticing what she endured. Getting out of bed became an act of courage. Going to work became an offering. Resting without guilt became a lesson she learned slowly. Imperfectly. There were setbacks, weeks when the heaviness deepened and she withdrew again, convinced she was failing everyone. Elias remained, steady as ever, though she saw the worry in his eyes when he thought she wasn't looking. Love, she learned, could be both comforting and painful in its constancy. One evening, long after dark, they sat together on the floor of the living room, backs against the couch, sharing a simple meal from mismatched plates. The house was quiet. The world felt far away. Mara rested her head on Elias's shoulder, her body tired but her mind briefly calm. "I don't know when this will end," she said softly. "I know," he replied. The honesty of his answer surprised her, but it also relieved her. There was no promise hidden inside it, no false certainty, just presence. As another year approached, Mara found that the heaviness no longer frightened her in the same way. It was still there, still demanding, but she understood now that her life was larger than it. It existed alongside love, alongside memory, alongside the quiet strength she did not know she possessed until it was required. She stood one morning at the kitchen window, watching light creep across the yard. Her body ached. Her eyes felt gritty with fatigue. And yet, for a brief moment, she felt rooted in place rather than trapped. The day waited. She did not rush to meet it, but she did not turn away either. In the small house at the edge of town, life continued in its simple, imperfect way. There was worry and weariness, but there was also devotion, patience, and the slow accumulation of shared days. Mara did not feel fixed. She did not feel finished. She felt present, and for now, that was enough.